Thanks so much for joining me. If you've been missing the hot, sunny, summer-like weather across the Canadian Prairies so far this summer, your luck's about to change as we're going to be seeing significant heat building into our region through the end of the week. Perhaps a little bit too much for some. Let's start by taking a look here at a map of forecast height anomaly. That's basically just looking at where the atmosphere is thicker or thinner than normal. This is up at 500 millibars, about the middle part of the atmosphere. These blues are areas where the atmosphere is a little bit thinner, generally associated with cooler air masses in the lower part of the atmosphere. And of course, these oranges and reds associated with thicker or a taller atmosphere with warmer air masses beneath. So keep an eye on this upper trough here off the BC coast as we get through the middle and later part of the week. It starts to dig southward here, and downstream, that upper ridge really starts to build in intensity and kind of peaks in intensity as we get into Monday through the north central United States. This is what everyone's been calling the heat dome. Heat dome, of course, is just a very strong high pressure system. We have air sinking throughout the atmosphere that's causing clearing skies, compressional warming of the temperatures, and of course, very hot surface temperatures as well. So we're going to be seeing bona fide heat wave conditions through much of the northern United States, as well as southern central areas of the country as we get into of Canada, rather, as we get into late this week and early next week as well. So also notice here this very tight packing of these height lines here between these higher heights and these lower heights. The atmosphere doesn't like significant imbalances like this. So it tries to fix that imbalance. Basically, air wants to flow from high pressure or these high heights down the slope to the lower pressure or the lower heights. But because the Earth is rotating, it gets deflected to the right in the northern hemisphere. And we can end up with a very strong jet stream. And that's, in fact, what we're expecting as we get into Sunday morning here. This is approaching 70 knots at 500 millibars, about 5 kilometers above the Earth. That's a very strong jet stream for mid-July. And of course, this jet stream could support the risk of severe thunderstorms across parts of the prairies as we get into this weekend. So certainly something very interesting associated with this heat dome. So again, significant heat and humidity likely to build across much of the middle part of the country as we get into next week. How high are those temperatures? Well, as we get into the weekend, that warming trend really persisting and kind of peak heat as we get into sort of Sunday, Monday, Tuesday time frame. Temperatures approaching 10 degrees above normal through parts of the Canadian Prairies. That translates to daytime highs getting well into the 30s, likely mid and even upper 30s in parts of the prairies at the peak of this heat event. So it's going to be very hot out there and very humid as well, because we had a lot of rain in recent weeks. And of course, the soils are very moist. Those crops are growing. I call it crop sweat when they're giving off the moisture through evapotranspiration. It can make things truly humid, especially with those high pressure systems, that sinking air. The air can get very stagnant and very soupy in the lower part of the atmosphere. So we may see daily high temperature records set with this heat wave, but we also might see some record dew point temperatures with that. Of course, the dew point is just the temperature you have to cool the air to reach saturation. It's a good measure of moisture in the atmosphere, so we can see this humidity really building across the prairies as that high pressure system really starts to build. And we could be seeing dew point temperatures approaching like the 20-degree mark, even beyond as we get into Sunday and Monday. Some of this, this forecast here from the European showing mid-20 dew points through much of Saskatchewan and Manitoba. That's like that's incredible heat and humidity, dangerous heat, really. I mean, dew points, when they're that high, you tend to see humidex values well into the 40s. And so we could be seeing, record-breaking dew point temperatures in some places, just due to the kind of unique setup this year with the very wet conditions in recent weeks and then this heat building in. It's possible that things are going to get very uncomfortably hot and humid across the eastern prairies as we get into later this week and early next week, potentially record-breaking, at least in the sense, like a daily record sense. Again, these high-pressure systems associated with sinking air and dry conditions, this model here showing precipitation anomaly for the next 15 days or so. And it's showing a dry signal across much of Western Canada, southern central BC, northern, even parts of northeast BC there, central southern Saskatchewan, Manitoba, across much of northern Ontario into western Quebec, and of course a lot of Alberta there remaining dry as well. So I'm a little bit skeptical that it'll be quite this dry, because we're likely going to be seeing thunderstorm activity as well, which could be a double-edged sword. Of course, strong thunderstorms can have hazards like large hail, damaging winds, tornadoes, or they can produce lightning that could start new wildfires, especially following these very strong heat dome type events. These strong high pressure systems with the prolonged hot, dry weather, it really dries out that forest vegetation, can make it like fuel for wildfires. And if we get that ignition, we could see an uptick in fire activity. So like I say, double-edged sword. The other side of that, of course, is that thunderstorms bring heavy rain, and so areas where we're quite dry, it could be beneficial in some sense. Starting to see a sign here of that western U.S. monsoon developing as well over the next 15 days or so as warm, moist air streams north out of Mexico into the region, bringing thunderstorms, so initially dry lightning, potential more wildfire starts here, but as it gets more and more moist, more downpours across the region could help alleviate the drought conditions, and maybe we'll see that pushing north toward the Canadian border throughout the summer. But in general, this is a very dry pattern with this upper ridge here. But like I say, we're still going to be seeing a lot of thunderstorm activity, especially as this ridge starts getting going this week. It's still going to be very active across parts of the prairie provinces with a risk of thunderstorms every day, bringing severe potential to the prairie provinces into early next week. But then, as that upper ridge starts to collapse and starts to move off to the east, along the west side of it, very classic, you'll see significant thunderstorm activity. And we could see that pushing into much of BC and Alberta into the early and middle part of next week. And, that activity likely passing into the central and eastern prairies at times as well as we get later into next week. So again, that's getting quite a ways out there in model land. But, we can see what are called ring of fire thunderstorms along the northern edge of that upper ridge. We can see storms that are very frequent passing through those areas. So it could be a fairly stormy pattern for some across Western Canada. And again, the main concern with that is where it's been warm and dry, the potential for more wildfire ignitions, and of course, the risk of severe weather at times. But elsewhere, very hot and dry conditions, almost kind of favoring flash drought conditions when it gets that hot and dry for several days. So again, the hot, dry, windy weather can prime the kind of the forests for wildfire. And we can take a look at the forecast fire danger here for the next few days. And we can see as that heat really gets going across the country, we're going to be seeing that fire danger increasing as would be expected through much of the country as that upper ridge develops as we get here into the middle part of the month, increasing fire danger across the country. So again, right now, currently seeing fires putting off smoke in 3 areas of North America: Quebec, the desert Southwest, and Northwest Territories, with a few here in the Northern Prairies, as well as that big fire off near Boston Bar, BC, putting off lots of smoke. With this high, would expect, this is typically when you would see an uptick in fire activity as you see that upper high really priming forest vegetation for fire. And then you get, when the ridge breaks down, you get the thunderstorm activity, the wildfires can ignite as a result of that lightning activity. So that you would expect that to occur here in the Northwest states and across much of Western Canada. So this map could look different in a couple of weeks following the heat and some thunderstorm activity. That remains to be seen, but likely going to be seeing an uptick in wildfire activity as a result of this ridge in the coming weeks. If you like the video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks so much for joining me, and we'll talk to you next time.